I had a hard time with growing up with as an Indigenous here in Canada, in the Secwepemc. I had a really hard time growing up as a so-called Indian, and had a lot of problems, racial troubles and all that. And I tried so hard to not be just another one that eventually I became just another one. And it wasn't till I got over being just another one that I could finally find my true self. And that was through theater. That was through the Chiptikwa. That was through going to school and becoming a teacher. That was through going through all the trials and tribulations of being First Nations in Canada that I found who I truly am. And no longer am I just another one. I'm Kenthen Thomas, educator, teacher.
Hello, I'm Tom Hackett, and this is my podcast about the ancient art of storytelling. Here we discuss the origins and evolution of stories through ancient mythology, legends, and oral traditions. Because every story has a story. You're talking to some students and that you're doing a telling?
Yeah, that's what I call them when I do a storytelling session. I'm going to do a telling. And then it's just a short way to say, yeah, I'm going to go do some storytelling today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And is there a word in your language then for a storyteller? Something that,
Yeah,
like...
I heard it before, but I can't remember it right now off the top of my head. But I just, yeah, all the time. If I am going to refer to them through the Secwepemc Nation, I usually just use Chiptikwa. That just means legends that teach. And legends and the teachings that we get from them on the most basic level are how things came to be and how not to behave. Yeah.
Yeah, legends that teach. I love that. Can you repeat that word?
Chiptikwa.
Chiptikwa.
Yeah.
I wrote it down, but I had no idea how to pronounce it. So
yeah, it looks a little. When you look at it, it doesn't come to you as Chiptikwa.
No, yeah, it didn't at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to learn. I had to say it over and over for a long time before I finally started to even come close to it.
Yeah, right.
I don't think I'm even still. I think I'm still a little bit off, but I'll get it.
It's better than mine.
Yeah.
Better than how I pronounce it. Legends that teach. I'll use that for now. In your opinion, what do you think makes someone a storyteller? Like, what is it about someone that's captivating?
Well, beyond what I said before, like I believe everyone's a storyteller, but if they're going to be a storyteller, then I think they have to have I don't know, like I think practice and just the ability to let loose through the words and to find innovative and engaging ways, interesting ways to take the teachings of our ancestors and to push them out there and to make the listeners want to hear them. Yeah, because I've seen where some people have said, oh, I'm going to tell a story today, and then people just kind of tune them out. And I sit there and I go, oh, this is such a good story, but it could be the wrong venue. A lot of times our stories were meant to put people to sleep.
Why do you think that you became a storyteller?
I don't think I meant to be. I didn't wake up one day and say I want to be a storyteller. That wasn't it by no means at all. I think I wanted to be an actor, and when I did Secwepemc Native Theatre, and I worked somewhat with Caravan Farm Theatre, and I did some work in town, and after acting was done with me and I got no roles offered to me, like I wasn't the next TV, or it wasn't the next Evan Adams or anything like that. I think I realized that, geez, well, that's it for that. But then in my community here, my auntie asked me to do the telling of Bear and Coyote Make Day and Night, so I set out and did that. And for the longest time, I fretted. I didn't like the idea of being a storyteller, because with it carries responsibility. Responsibility to community, responsibility to self, responsibility to ancestors, responsibility to carry yourself in a good way, and to also ensure that everything in your life is in a good way as well. All of this kind of dissuaded me from calling myself a storyteller. So for the longest time, I would say I'm a performer who happens to know stories. So if you want to hear the stories, I'll for sure tell you the stories, but I can also perform other things. So that was my way of relegating myself and positioning myself, so that if I felt like I failed the community in some way, ending up on the front page for getting into a bar brawl or something like that, I could say, well, what is it? I'm told you,
We were warned. We were warned.
Yeah. I told you how I was. You knew. But at the end of the day, when I became a teacher, I saw it in a very, very different way. So I said, well, I better take it a little more seriously and take on the moniker. It's just a phrase, right? I still am who I am, but I enjoy it now. Like when I go to events, I try to follow protocols and I try to be in a good way. And I try to act in a kind and good way for the most part.
So it's kind of a two-part question. Do you have a favorite moment in a favorite story that you love telling? But then have you had a reaction from people around that's just totally shocked you or gave you an insight that you hadn't seen before while you're storytelling?
Well, okay, for the first one, a moment. I was doing a storytelling session probably like a long time ago, 26, 28, maybe 27, 2007, where I was at this event. Might have been 28, because I think it was a couple years after my Kia'a, Mary Thomas, had passed. And she was a big part in me becoming a storyteller, even though she wasn't there for when I became a storyteller. She always knew that I could do it, and she always supported me. And I was at this event, and it was fairly big. There were probably about 500-600 people in the audience. And I was telling the story, and I was running around on stage, just going full force, and I could feel the sweat coming down my face, and I was just having the time of my life, and I was enjoying it. I could feel the joy in my heart, and I was having fun. And I usually take a scan through the audience, try to read the audience. And sometimes I'll even pick out one person to try and tell this part of the story to, because I feel like they're going to enjoy it the most. Even though I haven't seen this person over here, I'll look at this one person. And I was scanning the audience. And when I scanned it quickly, I swear that I saw my Kia'a, Mary, in the crowd, just standing there like this, like with her hands clasped together, and just smiling, a big smile that she did. She used to do the smile where she would smile with her mouth closed, and she'd just look up at you. And I was telling it, and I looked, and then I looked back really quick, and I gasped for a second. I went, and then I looked, and it was gone. But I was like, in the moment, I became Kenthen. I was no longer Coyote, and I was telling a story, and I was telling this part where Coyote retells the story that he just went through. And I went, and then I went and lost my eyes, and I went, oh, and then I looked, and I went, oh, and luckily it fell perfectly right there, because I went, oh. But then I felt them, and I could see that they were still in my head, so I went, oh, Koopki, ooh, they're still there, and everyone laughed. But in my heart, it was fluttering, because I in my mind's eye, and with my physical eyes, I saw my Kia'a. At least I must have saw her. The realm she was so close to the realm at that moment that she probably just came for a visit. So I looked, and she was gone. But that was a moment that I'll still always remember. Like it hit me in such a way that I still remember the people that were around her. I still remember the crowd and how it smelled and what it looked like in there. But if you ask me about an audience that I was a part of maybe 2 years ago at UBC, I won't remember anyone. I won't remember how it looked or how it smelled. But that moment really, really sticks out in my mind. And what was the second question?
Who is Mary?
Oh, Dr. Mary Thomas. That's my granny. Yeah, she passed in 2006.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The second question was, what's kind of the most popular story that's resonated with the people you've told stories to? Or has there been a moment where you've seen that kind of a reaction from people that are listening?
It's probably the last story I told. And that's because that's the one I'm closest to in that moment. And next week, when if you came back and set up all your equipment and asked me that same question, I'll probably say the same answer. It'll probably be the last story I told, because in those moments, I'll see some people, they'll disengage, they'll start going on their phone, they'll talk to their partner next to them, but then I'll see that one person where they're just like, they're engaged, they're pulling me in, and I'm pulling them in, and it's like a little ball between us. We're playing, and that's why it's called a play, right? We're playing back and forth, and I'll try and engage the other ones, and I'll try and bring them into it by addressing how they're behaving. I'll try to address that through the actions in the play, and sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't, but always that last play that I did, that telling that I did, that last story I told, to me is always the best story I told. Because I feel like maybe only once or twice in my life that I ever just threw out a story out there that I said, here's the story. I don't feel like telling stories today. Here's the story. I'm out of here. I think I've only done that maybe once or twice. And the rest of the time, I put everything I have into the stories when I'm telling them at that moment. I just try to do my best that I can right then and there, and make sure that it's told the best that I can in the best way that I possibly, with all the best possible energy that I have.
I love that when you say you're giving and you're getting it back too, because it really is. You are playing with the audience. Even though you're the one that's talking, you're giving and you're receiving at the same time.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot too with Coyote, and some of the earlier, like you said, some of the older versions, he really is quite a sexual character. Kind of think about that now. It's like we've got sex education, so we can talk to kids about that. We've got, there's commercials, the TV shows that they can learn about sexual reproduction, and especially even from a younger age too. We talk to kids and we make that a big deal. Do you see that as being maybe why Coyote is so sexual in some of the stories? That there's that fear of, young boys or young girls getting pregnant at a young age, and maybe that's what a lot of that Coyote reference comes to?
I don't know. I've never really had to address that part of it, because I usually find ways around it in my tellings. Like in the story of how Coyote made a tree fall in love with him. In the old version, he obviously made love to the tree, and he kept on going back to it until eventually the tree falls in love with him. And it could have definitely been a Me Too story. And and there's the story of Muskrat too, where he circles the young maiden 4 times and he impregnates her. That could have been a Me Too as well. I've never really asked any elders about that. I actually should. I think that's a teaching and a learning that I'll have to take on at some point, about why those stories were told in such a way. I've never actually really discovered that. That was one thing that I always kind of stayed away from, because of society, and because I felt uncomfortable telling the stories in those way. I don't know. I never really got around to learning why the stories were told and retold in those ways, with Coyote being such a sexual predator. Yeah.
Yeah, it comes
Yeah.
across that way for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting to kind of think about that and go back into it and figure. I love exploring the history of the story, right? Where it came from, what the reason being for it is. So that's why I get kind of fascinated by some of that. When you talk about Turtle Island, what are you referencing?
North America.
And is that like the beginning of life story?
Oh no, I just reference it to that. We don't actually. That isn't part of our creation story. That was just a term that's been adopted from the Anishinaabe and back east and that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just adopt it, and I actually don't use it in any of my stories except for one story. I can't remember which story I use it in, but I mention it. Oh, Coyote makes the tree fall in love with him again, where the tree falls in love with the trees around it, then all over the Secwepemc, then all over Turtle Island, which is North America, then all over through the big waters, all over Mother Earth. Yeah, we didn't have terms for Mother Earth and for North America in our Secwepemc machine. So,
Do you know many mermaid stories?
we have water monster, we have Kalmukakwa stories. Kalmukakwa is water people. So water people were there were three dimensions to our land a long time ago. There was where the sky people lived, and they were giants because they didn't have anything. They didn't have no atmosphere. They didn't have anything, so they just grew and grew and grew. And then there was us on the earth level. Then there were the people who lived in the water, and they were the water people. So I guess that was kind of like the mermaids, but they just lived in an alternate, yeah. And that was like the trout children and other people like that, yeah.
And what do you feel what was the importance of those characters then? Do you know? Have you looked into that?
I haven't done much research on it. I've only told a couple stories that had to do with the Kalmukakwa. And one was the trout children. Another one was I can't remember the name of it, but it was years and years and years ago I told that story. So I haven't had to discover that much about them or research or ask about them. That would be a question that I'd have to ask the elders.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I've found and this is only my own interpretation, and I should do what you do and talk to some elders and sit down and just kind of go through it. But I always kind of think the mermaid stories are, again, they seem to be moving the daughters at a young age, like before we had, again, TV and stories that we can relate to younger children. When girls kind of became of age and you needed to move them to different areas to meet other boys, not within your group, your area. So, and they always kind of seem to be these you can't come home again stories.
Yeah.
And, and that's trickled down to even in like the Littlest Mermaid or the Little Mermaid from Disney, where once you leave, you're going to have to find a way to accept that and be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
It's always kind of interesting to think about that.
Well, that's the same with the trout children when it's about this lonely woman who falls in love with the trout, and she swims with him down to his land, and then she's there for the rest of her life, but her grandchildren can return to the earth, and then they end up the boy ends up in the sky people's land after a while. Yeah. So all three realms, but that story to me is about connectivity. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe leaving and then coming back as well. It's not the end. It's
it's all connected.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And our generations will meet up again. It's not forever. It's just for now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
I don't have a favorite story, but I have a hard story. Like stories for me, like you were talking about creation stories. I've had to tell. Well, not had to tell. I opted to tell because I was asked to tell about Talitsa and his brothers. And that's like our version of Lord of the Rings. It's just this incredible journey of these four brothers who go all through their life learning from their kia'a how to kill and how to find our people eaters. Then they spend the rest of their life chasing down these people eaters, and they create they create the land and they create the way things are now because of their actions and because of what they did and what they do. And it's just this incredible epic story. And at the simplest telling, it takes me 45 minutes just to tell that one story. And at the most, I could probably spend, days telling that story. And it's a tough story to tell. It's really tough. Yeah. So that's the hardest. It's not that I don't like to tell it. It's just that it's hard. It's a hard story to share. But other stories, like ones that are quick and that they're just really right to the point and they have a few laughs in them. Those are the ones that are easy for me to tell. Those are the ones, and I can almost go back and tell that story almost verbatim sometimes. If I'm doing a storytelling session, 6 nights in a row, and I just do that one story, after a while it gets verbatim. And I know where the laughs are going to hit. I know where, it's almost like a comedy sketch or something. I know where the laughs are going to hit. I know where the oohs are going to hit. And yeah. So I don't think there's a favorite or an unfavorite. I think there's just really hard ones to tell that not only are physically hard to tell and mentally hard to remember to tell, but they're also emotionally and spiritually tiring. They make me just absolutely exhausted after I share them. And then the other ones, yeah, if I tell them, I'm kind of tired afterwards, but I'm not exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. It's a performance. It takes a lot out of you. Yeah. And you're bringing that emotion out too.
Yeah.
That's interesting about that story. At some point, I'm obviously not going to ask you to do it now, but what was the name of that story with the 4 brothers then?
Talitsa and his brothers. Yeah.
And what do you think they represent then? Are they like 4 elements?
I didn't even go that far, because when I tell those stories, everything else to me is the important part. And the Talitsa and his brothers are just the humanness of us trying to survive and trying to create. So that's the way I thought of it. Talitsa and his brothers were the secondary, and every single element that they went up against were the central characters. And what happened to them, or how they got transformed, was the happening. Yeah, so I haven't even got that far with thinking about Talitsa and his actual brothers, because I've always considered it the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. That's fascinating. And when you talked earlier too, you mentioned that you try to find new ways to draw people in, or try to connect with people and try to keep it, entertaining. What are some of the ways that you use? I know I see you've got your drum there.
Yeah, I use the drum a lot. I started doing this. I think I started doing this probably about 10 years ago. I found that the drum, when I do a beat, like I'll bring it along like this, and a long time ago, and I'll start off slow, and then I'll start telling the story, and as it getting faster and faster and faster, I'll pick up the beat and get the beat louder, and then all of a sudden bring it back down. But also, if there's a student who's not listening, then I can give it a good whack, and then they go, oh, and then, or even silence too. If you go silent for a second, you'll catch people like going, why is it quiet? And then you can start your story again. Yeah. And if you look right at them, yeah, just teaching class management things. And I do it even with older people too. They'll be sitting there and they'll be talking. And they'll be talking about bingo, or they'll be talking about their car. And oh my God, my car, man. And then I'll be telling a story, and I'll see people around them, just kind of give them those half glances, like. And then, so I'll try to manage that situation by getting loud and then going really quiet. And when they look up at me, I'll look right at them. I'll stare right at them. And I'll begin the story by looking right at them again. And then usually it's a good tactic, because then after that they don't talk, because once you're isolated and once you know you've been seen, usually you try to correct your ways.
Yeah, you're that person in the audience.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But then you incorporate them into your story too.
Yeah.
And that's really a neat tactic as well. Do you have a story that you'd be willing to share with us then?
Yeah, sure. And I'll do one. I'll do a quick one. This one's called the Two Coyotes. I call it the Tale of Two Coyotes. I can't remember where I heard this from. And for the life of me, I can't remember where I heard it. But I heard it and I liked it. And I like to use it whenever I go to a new town and go there for a storytelling session. I always finish off my storytelling sessions with this story. And it's a pretty quick one. And it starts off like all of our other Secwepemc stories start off with. A long time ago. A long time ago, Coyote, the one we call Singhochalo, Secwepemc, and even sometimes Singleep, was out wandering around doing what Coyote does. He was running, jumping, having the time of his life. And all of a sudden he found himself right here in the area of the Kamloops, Secwepemc, Kamloops, British Columbia. And he was wandering around when all of a sudden, in the distance, he heard a yip. And he went, oh, what was that? So he replied back, yep. And then he heard off in the distance, yep. And they carried on like this for a while. One would go, yep. And the other one would go, yep. And the other one would go, yep. And finally, Coyote said, I'm getting sick of this. What is that over there? I want to know what it is. So he listened a little harder. And he could hear it sniffing him. He could hear it sniffing at him. So he sniffed back at it and he went, and he sniffed back at it. And they sniffed back and forth. And they would yip once in a while. Yip, yip. And finally, out of the bush, he jumped out. And he looked at him. And they looked at each other. And they looked at each other up and down. They went, and they said, who are you? Who am I? Who are you? I asked you first. Who are you? And the first coyote, not one to back down from explaining exactly who he is, went, well, if you don't know, then you must know. I'm Coyote, Secwepemc, and Singhochalo. And the second one looked at him, the one that jumped out of the bush, and he went, what? I'm Coyote, I'm Secwepemc, I'm Secwepemc, and I'm Singhochalo. And he went, what? And they looked at each other, and they both started becoming angry, and they went, and they almost got into a fight. When all of a sudden, the first coyote remembered something. He barely liked his name. He always thought he was worthy of so much more. He felt cheated in his life because he thought he should have been like a grizzly, an eagle, a salmon, anything but a coyote. Coyotes are mangy. They have all this weird fur on them, and they stink most of the time. And he thought to himself, oh boy, if I could be something else, I'd love to be a grizzly. And he tried to growl like a bear. And the other coyote was standing there watching him go through this thought process. And he turned around and he looked at him, and then he smiled. And he said, oh, there, my friend. And the second coyote looked at the first coyote and he went, friend? And he walked up to him and he put his arm around him and he said, I got an idea. We don't need to fight over this. We can do something that will help us realize who we truly are and meant to be. I know of this community, this little village called Kamloops, British Columbia. And all these Kalmuck, all these humans, all these people. And the one thing I know about people, humans, Kalmuck, is they like to give names to everything. They like to classify them. And they like to put them in their little compartments. And they like to put them in their little pigeonholes. And keep them there until they're done with them. So, whatever name they give us is the name that that we'll stick with. How's that sound for a plan? And the second coyote looked at the first coyote and he said, sounds wonderful, sounds fabulous, I'm totally up for that. And the first coyote looked at the second coyote and he goes, since you're my guest, you can walk across the clearing up there and make a ruckus. And when all the humans and Kamloops come out and give you the name, you can have that name and you can keep it. You can go first. And the second coyote said, oh, you're such a gentleman. I knew that we had so much alike. So he started walking across the clearing, the second coyote, and he made a ruckus. Oh, yip, 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 woo. And all of the humans and Kamloops came running out and they went, ooh, hey, what's that up there? I don't know. Let's go look. Oh, look at it. What is it? I don't know. Look harder. Okay. And they looked up hard and they said, oh, I know what that is. That's a coyote. And oh, that coyote, that second coyote was happy because he never considered anything but coyote for his name. So he did a little dance and he ran off and he was happy. He was happier than you'd ever know. But the first coyote was standing there and he started laughing. He started going, oh my Lord, oh my Tekel Kupke. Wonder what name they'll give me, because they can't give us both coyote. There can be no way that we'll both be coyotes. They're gonna have to give me a name like Grizzly, rah, or they're gonna have to give me a name like Skeleton Ooey, where I can swim around the ocean. I can go all the way out in the world and tour around. So the second one walked across the clearing and oh, he was so happy. He did a little dance and he loved being a coyote. Then the first one, he was standing back at the beginning of the clearing and he started thinking to himself, oh boy, what name are they gonna give me? Maybe they'll give me the name Skeleton Ooey, where I can swim out into the ocean and tour the world. Oh, what kind of travel that will be. Oh, I can't wait. Or maybe they'll give me the name Eagle and I could fly high in the air. Oh, graceful and beautiful. And when I see that coyote, I can poop on him. And he ran across the clearing and he got halfway across and he banged this drum and he made a whole bunch of ruckus and he went, whoa, 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 yip, 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 ow! And all the humans came running out again. And they ran out from the Kamloops and they did their funny little human run. They ran out and they looked up. What is that again? I don't know. Let's look again. So they looked again and they looked up there as hard as they could. And Coyote was changing all his body shapes to try and coerce him to give him a good name. But they didn't. They kept on giving him weird names like Scoopakin. They looked up, is that Scoopakin? Porcupine. And he looked down and goes, I don't want to be a porcupine. So he changed his shape. He looks like a moose. And he said, a moose? That's kind of cool, but they have too long of skinny of legs. So he changed his shape again. He's a prairie chicken. And finally Coyote said, ah! But it was a little Kia'a who came out. And she came out with her little cane. And she came out with her cane. She walked out and she went. And she looked up and she looked up at Coyote and she locked eyes with him for a quick second. Then she looked to her left. Then she looked to her right. Then she looked back up at Coyote and she said, Ayo, that up there is not a prairie chicken. It's not a moose. And it's not even a Scoopakin. And all of the humans looked at her and they said, well, what is it? Kia'a, we can't figure it out. And Coyote looked down at her and he became excited because he knew this Kia'a was the wisest one of them all. And he said, oh, Kia'a, give me a really good name. Oh, please give me a good name. And he locked eyes with her the best he could as she looked back at him. That up there is a... And Coyote went, yeah, tell them what I am. That up there. And there was a long silence. Is just... another one. And all of the humans looked at each other and they all laughed and they said, oh, yeah, that's right. He's just another one. And they even started chanting, he's just another one. He's just another one. Then they went home because it was supper time. Coyote stood up there and he looked to his left and he looked to his right. And he knew at that moment he was no longer a coyote, a senghocholo, a Secwepemc, or even a senkleep. He was just another one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
I like that one because I like asking students, like, especially when I'm working with students, like, what kind of lesson could you learn from that story? The funny thing is that by pushing yourself onto others, like, well, my takeaway from that story is by pushing yourself onto others so that you want them to perceive you in such a way, like tough or athletic or fun loving Kenny or whatever. You want this moniker hung around your neck. They're just going to see you as just another one unless you truly be who you are truly meant to be. And that's the beauty of that story for me. Yeah. I had a hard time with growing up as an Indigenous here in Canada, in the Secwepemc. I had a really hard time growing up as a so-called Indian, and had a lot of problems, racial troubles and all that. And I tried so hard to not be just another one that eventually I became just another one. And it wasn't till I got over being just another one that I could finally find my true self. And that was through theater. That was through the Shipdikwa. That was through going to school and becoming a teacher. That was through going through all the trials and tribulations of being First Nations in Canada that I found who I truly am. And no longer am I just another one. I'm Kenthen Thomas, educator, teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really resonates. Like, that be careful what you ask for. You've got a name. If you want to change it,
yeah,
you might not like what the outcome is, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just another one. Yeah, it's quite the depth to it. Hurts to think about that you could just be just another one, and that's how you get viewed.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just, exactly like you say, you just be proud of who you are and what you can do, and be a person.
For sure.
Instead of trying to be an image.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, that's really neat. Thank you, Kenthen. I really appreciate all of this. This has been fantastic. I wanted to say, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce this very well, but Kukjetsu? Kukjetsu?
Cook's Jam?
Cook's Gem?
Yeah. It's just like it says phonetically. Cook's
Okay.
Jam. Yeah.
I was trying too hard.
Yeah, Cook's Jam.
Cook's Gem.
Yeah,
I appreciate everything. Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
Cook's Gem. Okay.
You might have saw it as Cook's Chacham.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
That's how I saw it spelled.